All right, Manu Chao's the next artist with the album Clandestino. And in the opening montage, you heard Bongo Bong. And now you're going to hear Luna y Sol. All right, Matt, what are the stats?
Clandestino by Manu Chao comes in at number, what is that? 314. That's what it is in the 1990s and best ever albums. Number 35 in 1998. Number 1,677 of all time. It is Manu Chao's highest rated album on best ever albums. It did make Rolling Stone's list, coming in at number 469 there. And Manu Chao ranked number 1,024 of overall artist rankings on best ever albums.
All right, Manu Chao. This album came out October 6, 1998. He was born in Paris, France in 1961, and his birth name is Jose Manuel Tomas Arturo Chao Ortega. He's a French-Spanish musician, and he sings in multiple languages, as I'm sure you guys heard. He has 5 studio albums as a solo artist, and this is the first. Genres be Latin alternative, world beat, reggae, ska. He kind of does a little bit of everything. Influences, well, he said The Clash and The Jam. I'll get to that in a second. Bob Marley, Ush Mutantes. He said his childhood is a big influence due to how his parents raised him and who he was around, his parents' friends and things like that. And the sounds of street music from around the world, he also said, influenced him. Similar artists, we talked about Cafe Tacuba, me and John did. Michael Franti, we covered him on a single, I think. Oza Motley and Juanes as well. No singles on the Billboard Hot 100. His 2007 album Radio Lena reached 71. And in the mid-'80s, he formed the Spanish-English rockabilly group Hot Pants. And then he formed a band in France after that called Los Carayos. And so that was the rockabilly aspect, is where the Clash and the Jam came from. He was that 80s kind of rock scene really influenced him initially. In 87, he formed a band called Manu Negra with his brother and cousin, and then they disbanded in 95. He then formed the group Radio Bemba Sound System in Madrid, and the goal of the band was to replicate street music from around the world. They spent several years touring Central and South America, and the songs were recorded using a laptop, and the result is this album, Clandestino. He recorded street sounds, conversation snippets, and other noises that were incorporated into this album as well. Crazily, he spent some time with the Zapatistas when he was in Mexico as well, which I thought was interesting. And the album itself kind of...
I mean, the album does have some left-wing politics, if you understand your Spanish, for sure.
Yeah. And he's very kind of politically outspoken from what I saw, and kind of supports different causes and different things like that, environmentally I think aware as well. The album spread organically through word of mouth and eventually entered the French top 10 and stayed on the chart for 5 years. It eventually became an international hit and sold over 5 million copies, so this was a very kind of organic slow kind of burn for him, but him and the band, but successful. And his most recent album is 2024's Viva 2, and he's currently on tour in Spain and Italy. So he's still, and his band are still out in the world and making music. So a band whose name I knew but never listened to any music. So let's start with Matt this time. What'd you think of Manu Chao?
Yeah, so I actually heard of him many years ago. Actually, I saw him at Bonnaroo. I think I'm trying to see the year. It looks like probably 2007. At the time, I was kind of like, I would send out the list of bands to friends, and I would say, hey, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know everybody here. Who should I check out? And a buddy of mine was like, oh, you got to check out Manu Chao. And I was like, all right. And I remember the set being great, and being really fun, but that was kind of all I never delved into his albums or anything like that, so that was kind of my knowledge base of Manu Chao coming into this, and really liked this album, kind of connected with it right away. Definitely early on reminded me of, you said Uj Mutantes, but there was definitely there was something about this, because we have covered other albums that have this kind of like, this world music, kind of like more of a like a Latino vibe. We certainly covered, what was the Cuban album that we listened to? The Buena Vista Social Club.
Buena Vista Social
record.
Club.
Yep. That kind of that harkens back to this. But the Uj Mutante certainly came up as well. But I found this just really fun to listen to. Lots of reggae, lots of stuff on the upbeat, right? So it was a very reggae kind of influenced record. The second one, along with the Lauryn Hill album that we covered this week, kind of leaning at least somewhat into the reggae elements, and I did like that. I thought it was interesting. I did notice he's switching up the languages here, so I found that was kind of interesting as well. And just melodic, there's a lot of great melodic things happening here. There's a lot of great horn parts that are just kind of thrown in there, in addition to the guitar playing and the which is kind of one of the more main instruments that they're using. But the horns sound great on this as well, and it's just I kind of view this as, it seems kind of like an upbeat record musically. And I'm sure it's lyrically, I mean, I never pay attention to them very much anyway, let alone if they're in a different language. So, right. But John talking about there's some political messages here, and that, that's not terribly surprising. I did see a little bit of his bio, knowing that that there is some, things weren't always smooth in his childhood and whatnot, and from his parents' perspective, but musically, it's a nice album to listen to. I listened to this in the car with my wife. One of the times I listened to it coming back from a trip that we had over the weekend, and it was a great listen. She loves stuff like this, just kind of like this. It takes you right to a different place. This is not the type of music that I typically listen to. My wife is definitely, she's more into this than I am, but I definitely get why. You kind of get a vibe of this small Spanish town that's just people are all outside and just kind of hanging out, and just being much more there's a much more communal kind of atmosphere and vibe to the culture, and some of these more in a Spanish kind of culture compared to the U.S. And this just kind of reminds me of that, makes me think of that, right? And it's really pleasant. So I think I'm definitely getting more of an appreciation for this type of music, for this more world music or Latin music, but I also think that it's not just a traditional sound that he's doing here. He's rapping on some of these things. It's I think that's can be considered rapping on this particular song. And so he kind of modernizes it a little bit as well. So he's kind of got a foot in the past, and but also using kind of more modern technologies and recording techniques. But overall, very, very pleasant to listen to. I remember seeing him live. I didn't know any of his songs then, and I remember that was great too. So I remember him putting on a great show. And as well as his band. So, good stuff. I'm glad we're covering this, because it's definitely not typical of something that I would go to, but I'm here for it. I would definitely revisit and check out his other stuff as well. So big thumbs up for me. I really enjoyed this one.
I fucking love this album, and I'd never heard it before, and I am here for I think for me, I was aware of a growing consciousness in America for Latin music in the late 90s, because there was, there were a lot of crossover songs, right? But they were still pop songs, whether it be Ricky Martin, Enrique Iglesias, there was another guy as well, who I'm remembering, but they were sort of pop with Latin infusing. And, we also, in doing this show, we've become aware of, we've covered albums from Selena, we've covered albums from Los Lobos, we've covered Café Tacuba, so for Mexican rock, and then, Shakira, Jennifer Lopez, another one who also you really couldn't know. She had Latin roots, right, in it, but occasionally would delve into that. But I'm here for the infusion of Latin music. I know Matt kept calling it world music, but I don't really consider this world music. This is Latin music. This one happens to have some infusion of reggae as well. And if you listen to the lyrics of this, it's a lot about finding your way in the world and cross-cultural connections. And there's sort of a journey element to a lot of these songs, and not not quite fitting in anywhere, but also wanting to connect with everywhere and feeling somewhat connected to everywhere. So I kind of got like a little bit. The world vibe is more, I think, lyrically for me than necessarily someone trying to put together different cultures. I think there's like an authentic nature to him as well. I love the fact
agree.
that it's like,
Yeah.
that it's like a trilingual album. I thought that was such a cool thing where he's back and forth between Spanish and French and even a little bit of English built in. Sonically, I really connected with all of the things here. As Matt mentioned, there's upbeat and downbeat, in terms of use of it. There's horns, there's all of this varied percussion. So you've got elements of both, reggae and Latin music, but he's got a real storyteller, cancion like element to him as well, where he's telling you his tale a little bit. Like, let me tell you the tale of what's going on. And his lyrics often take on that sort of that style. So like Lágrimas de Oro is a song like that. Welcome to Tijuana, which is basically a song where he's sort of like talking about Tijuana as like a vessel of vice, right?
Yeah,
like
like
along
Sin
the
City.
way.
Yeah.
Sin City kind of. And, both with, welcome to it, but also a little bit, I won't say judgment, but definitely there's a little bit of a knowledge, right? Of like the appropriation and the revisiting. All the way till the end, like El Viento, like is a great song, like about the wind, like in the wind. So there's this transitory nature of like him and his musical style, which I really connect with. I think at the end of the day, I just found this album to be like so very pleasant and like borderline like inspirational as like a musical track. I felt whenever I listened to this album, it really connected with me. It touched something emotionally in it. And I just did a little bit of research in MANU CHAO because I was interested, and he described his concerts as like cross-cultural group, like open therapy sessions, which I was like, God damn, that's like a really good description. A little bit of the feel, right? Like there's like an emotional resonance to this and like a world weariness. It's not too sad. It's not too, the advocacy part of it is there, but doesn't fully come all the way through. Hearing that he was like interested in The Clash really makes a lot of sense, because The Clash, one of my favorite, if not my favorite band of all time, has that same thing with them where they manage to kind of run the emotional gauntlet for me of, occasionally it's righteous indignation, but also there's a little bit of party, right? There's a little bit of fun. There's a little bit of subversiveness. There's a little bit of like laid back, borderline, like vice, edge to it. I got a lot of that in this as well. So another one right up there, very different, but another one like that Sparkle Horse album where I'm just like, I really, really love this album and want to check out all kinds of like other stuff that this artist did. So sign me up for the MANU CHAO, further listening thing, because I think he really put a great, and this is his first solo album, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. This is really awesome and like a real pleasant surprise this week. So strong thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I found this very accessible and very listenable. It did feel like you were going on a journey with him. I felt like, like being around the world with him in some ways. Like the music, not knowing French or Spanish, very little, if at all, like it transcends kind of the lyrics, and the music really kind of like grabbed me and took me on this journey and kind of transcended anything that, whether or not you knew the lyrics about it. It kind of, like you said, John, it kind of runs through all these emotions too, and you can pick up on that as well through the music, which I thought was very effective. And this is definitely one of probably my favorite of the Latin albums that we've covered, the handful of ones that we've covered. There's just kind of a nimbleness to this album that I really like. I did kind of feel like, I never look at the bio for the artist until after I listen to it once, because I don't want to kind of be, colored by their whatever their background or kind of what the point of the album is maybe, or something like that. And so I did really feel like it feels kind of like lived in and authentic, I guess, to whatever he was trying to do. The songwriting or the music is very catchy, like Bongo Bong. I just found like,
oh
kind
my gosh,
like, got in my head, like,
yes, it is like the most catchy song in the world, and it's two different songs with that beat back to back.
Right, it flows right into Je ne t'aime plus, and like it uses the same beat, and like it's seamless, because I was like, oh, this is, now it feels kind of French, and it's like, oh, it is French, and like, so he's also, you know, Matt said it's a world music, and it is, because he's like drawing on French stuff too in some ways, I think, as well. Did you, in Welcome to Tijuana, I thought it was funny that he incorporated the tequila song, that old like instrumental.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I forgot about that.
And that was like really kind of subtle, but like really effective and like humorous as well.
You're right, Josh, though there is a little bit of that like French music we listened to in the late 60s and the early 70s that has sort of like a winking sensuality to it a little bit, like intimate, right?
Yeah, it really comes across. He really feels like he's a world traveler, and that he's been a lot of places, and that he's toured around and stuff, which I really appreciated. I like the effect, like Matt said. I think the horns I thought were really effective in a lot of these songs. Lagrimos de Oro. I like the horns on that. The one like small nitpick is like he uses this repeating video game sound, which I think is like from Galaga or something, like of the spaceship, like, or the aliens coming down.
I was thinking Missile Command, but it's like, yes, it's something like that for sure.
Yeah. So he was really infatuated.
Which song is that? I don't think I.
The sound of like. The sound, the video game sound of like the alien coming down.
Oh yeah, which song is that?
It uses it throughout the album.
It's not just one song.
It starts on Clandestino. If you hear it though, I'm pretty sure it's Galaga from, because I played that recently. But I thought that was funny. Like it wasn't like so distracting, but it kept popping up. So he was clearly like interested in that. But overall this was a great kind of listen. I really liked kind of the variety of albums this week too. A lot of different music, and this was a nice surprise. So thumbs up for me as